Last meeting or public forum we had with OPD was actually about the Doring attacks, which the previous bike party was actually a tribute, not tribute to, I guess an anti-tribute, was a what's the term? A effort to gain attention or raise awareness of effort ride, and that was pretty cool. And Doring attacks are where people are deliberately just kind of hiding in the back, and the copyman explained it. And like, according to the police officer, they would be stealing cars and just kind of sitting in the back, and as soon as you're riding past them, they would just blast the door open, so that way you'd get knocked into traffic, or at least just knocked over. And they're very I couldn't believe I don't even want to repeat what he said, just because I hope he misspoke. So, but regardless, they're not really being very helpful as usual. And they're pretty much just leaving it up to people. And they have one investigator apparently out of 100,000 police doing what? I'm not really sure. So they're not taking that seriously. But on the bright side, the town is actually doing a lot of really cool stuff as far as the infrastructure for things like making things more of like a walkable town, more biker friendly. They're even greeting the biker paths. They're not making it safer for making a bike path right next to cars that are parked is just waiting for a disaster. Even someone who accidentally just carelessly opens the door without checking. It's kind of the same way as actually someone saved my life about a couple weeks ago, and when I was taking a bike path, and the way American roads are made, it's almost designed to kill bikers. And there's this concept. Don't want to give the guy any credit, because for no reason he has no certifications or anything, but he's given the mic, and for 100 years he's been pushing this concept called bicycle vehiculism. And it comes back from the days when, in case you didn't know, cars originally started in the city, just like everything else does, right? Technology starts in the city. So cars originally started in the city, and they would actually be electrical powered, like Baker and stuff like that would make cars, and they were electrical powered, and they would just be like horseless carriages. Bikes would also share the road with the people on the road, and these electric carriages would kind of just weave around through them. They kind of just almost be just another form of bike. And at the time, the top speed or everything was about 25 miles per hour. And surprisingly, the electric carriages went about 100 miles per charge. They took about, I think something like a day to charge, which, back in the day when people were living in streetcar cities, 100 miles is plenty of time to or plenty of range, to get around and get to do what you wanted to do. And people would be biking around and people were walking around. It wasn't really like roads were actually dedicated for cars, bikes, and or people specifically. It was just people would just weave water, water and fish and bubbles, whatever. And you see that actually kind of happening in the Netherlands and Norway and Sweden now, where they're actually removing parking spots, taking away highways and stuff like that, and making their roads more walkable. Because the more walkable your downtown is, the more people tend to just hang out, shop, and it just makes life more fun. I like spending my time outdoors. I like chatting with people. I like riding my bike around. If I didn't get my skateboard stolen, I would be using my skateboard. And I think that would probably be the best way to actually be doing this, be using a skateboard, because it's actually like a lot closer to the ground. But like those little BMX bikes works really well too, as well as using like an e-bike, of course, because you could use like really tight circles, and or you just get off, just you know quickly do a few. And I am shocked that people actually worked on High Street. That street is scary, and you guys have balls. So yeah, um, I will try to do that too because I owe it to you guys. But like, holy crap, that street is scary as hell. That's like scary for even if you're in a car. So and I don't know, that street seems like that street just needs to be completely redone. It's just a terrible. It's like this weird. I don't know. They added like this extra off ramp to it, and there's like it's like suddenly you feel like you're in New York, when you're on that street. I don't know. It's like terrible, and it's but still, it's a very very busy street, and make sure when you're out there, you're just like looking both ways, and you're not gonna get hit by a car. You're wearing like very shiny clothing, because I wear like a very bright blue, and I wear contrasting colors, contrasting, like orange contrasts with blue, red contrasts with blue pretty well, because we automatically see red and blue, and that catches your attention because one's a very rapid high frequency and one's low wavelength or low frequency. So using lighting, make sure that a car will, like, if you're not paying attention, slow down and not hit you. And as far as my experiences doing it, I don't I haven't had anyone not understand what I'm doing. Everyone seems to understand exactly what I'm doing, and they seem to appreciate it. Like, I mean, because who the hell likes hitting potholes? And if you could avoid, I mean, like when I used to drive, I would try to remember the pothole, and then I would just be like, damn it, I hit it again. And so like there's so many that, like, how would you remember them all? And at the same time, the effort is to get the town to fix them eventually, because we can't just get, I mean, as far as much gusto as we have, we can't fix them all ourselves. And the more people actually strike these things, it's just, asphalt is actually, just ask somebody in Phoenix, right? Asphalt is actually naturally a liquid. When cars drive over it, it's meant to actually be like, how like trains, their wheels made of steel and the rails made of steel. Well, car tires are what asphalt is made out of, because it just makes sense that the two are mated, so that when you are accelerating and braking, the two are actually supposed to match. And that's why it makes it so hard to actually design like new tires, is because asphalt is pretty much the problem. You have to design the tires based off of asphalt, and asphalt is designed off of the corpse of old tires. So new tires have to be designed out of asphalt, because it's pretty much the only thing that's compatible, and it has the qualities that you need, where as you're driving, it gets sticky when it needs to be sticky. When you're trying to do like a turn and it needs to grip, it'll actually increase friction, and so it'll actually increase friction on like the asphalt and your tire, so they both work together, and it'll help you get that turn done, unless you're actually trying to drift or something. But so the asphalt is actually technically supposed to pretty much stay pretty much in a tar-like form, but it dries out over time, and as that happens, it just ends up exposing like all the gravel underneath, and then cars just cause potholes because over time the ground underneath is not actually perfectly even, and it just ends up flaking up like particles of asphalt, which leaves sharp edges, and then the sharp edges get struck by another car, which then causes that pothole to get bigger and bigger. And you look at each pothole, you can actually see like dirt inside. And you know what's interesting? Even if we were to change every single car in the world right now, like we have a magic wand, and change each car to an EV, and they all ran on lithium, that would actually deplete the world of 48% of all the lithium reserves that we all know of. So it would actually be impossible, because suddenly we'd be at this level where suddenly we'd just be scrambling for new sources of power to make EVs. And lithium doesn't last forever. And cars do actually have to replace their batteries after a while because they go so fast, and they burn through so many lithium batteries, and they just explode for no reason as well. They get accidents. People don't really recycle lithium. They're using like all sorts of materials like phones and everything like that, and so hopefully new energy sources will come out soon that will address that issue. But in the meantime, EVs also are much heavier than cars. A car, no matter how low your energy is, like how low your battery is in a car, it's not any lighter. You're still carrying the batteries, and that's a problem. It'd be kind of cool if you could like my e-bike, I have an extra battery. I just always keep one full, and sometimes use it to charge my phone, my computer and stuff, and that way whenever my battery runs out, I could just quickly swap it, so I never actually have to wait, and I always have a full battery for my e-bike. And if I needed to, I could ride my bike just as it is anyway. It doesn't really matter. And those batteries, because you're basically matching your like, especially you have a torque sensor. Cadence sensors are getting more sensitive and better, but like I think they use like toad magnet now. But torque sensors, you're basically inputting as much power as the motor is, unless you're using something like a Sauron or something. But like something that is like a class 2 bike, you're actually riding like about 200 watts casually, and an average healthy person, when they're actually pushing it, like even sprinting, could go from 500 to 1,000 watts. So if your motor is 500 watts and you're also inputting 500 watts, you're actually like doubling the power of your bike, and that's saving a ton of batteries. And you can't say anything like that about EVs, because EVs, it's equivalent to just throttling your bike around. And it's interesting seeing that we're actually entering an age where we're seeing a lot of people getting, I've seen so many people switch to bikes, even people who had like these Hell's Angels, like switching to bikes. And it's always the same excuse. They say it's because you can go anywhere when you're on an e-bike. And it's true. It's like the freedom of being on an e-bike. I've been through drive-thrus on an e-bike, and you could take like an easy trick that I like to use, because for some reason GPSs presume you go 9 miles per hour when you pick the bike method, whereas when you pick like the walk method, it may claim it's longer, but it gives you a longer path, and sometimes it actually paths you differently, which is weird. And The difference is oftentimes it lets you go down like a fire road versus going down like, riding as a car. And going down a fire road is, safer. It's shorter, or it'll let you cut across the field. So just being on an e-bike and just using like navigation, try using walking. Or if you're on like a e-scooter, if you're on like a skateboard, try using walking and just see if that actually gets you there faster. Um, because in my experience, it does actually route you through fields. I wouldn't recommend it for e-scooters and for skateboards, but for bikes for sure. I mean, you have no issue if you have no issue going through a field like of grass, then by all means just go diagonally across the block versus do it going, because when you choose bikes, it tends to have you ride more like a car, and it tends to make you take right angles, and it seems to presume that you only want to be on sidewalks or streets, and you never ever want to be off of a sidewalk or a street, even if it's just like a dirt path or something that's like easy for any bike with even like no front suspension. But yeah, it's up to you. Like, it's just something to test out, because 9 miles per hour, if that doesn't sound right to you, if you are going faster than 9 miles per hour, then the GPS is most likely wrong. Because like last time I went home from a bike party, I got I picked the bike option, and it said like 49 minutes, and I got to the station in 14 minutes. So it was like completely off, and all I did was pick the walk mode versus using, following, just blindly following the the um the bike path that it gave me. So it would keep redirecting me, but I would just go just diagonally towards towards the station that I was going toward. And yeah, and so like what I've been doing is like, being in a bike gives you a lot of insight into how hard it is to get around town for people like in wheelchairs and stuff. Like, the width of your bike is about the same width as a person in a wheelchair or someone walking around on crutches, right? So you could pretty much get a feeling of what that would be like a simulated feeling of that in hyperspeed. You could also get an idea of like how bumpy the road is. Like, if you were walking on crutches, you would, and the road is like, you're not prepared for it, and the road has all these like, the sidewalk has all these like uneven paved slabs, you might slip. And I've seen like, old men slip and help them up and stuff like that. And I've heard from like people in wheelchairs that have gotten trapped in like wheelchair gutters and stuff like that. And if you pay attention, you can even like go around like keep going down like San Leandro, and you see like you go down like the off streets there, you'll find lots of these like almost like trololo crosswalks where they look like they slant down, but they don't. They slant down and they drop 3 inches. So that means that if if you're in a wheelchair, I don't know how easy. I've never been in a wheelchair, so yeah, maybe I should just do that for fun. But anyway, I don't know how hard it'd be to get up a 3 inch ledge on a wheelchair. And I actually don't understand why wheelchairs are built the way they are. Like, we have hand crank bikes, and bikes could pull trucks. Like, using leverage and gears, you could actually like get like the sprockets and gear ratios so that like a person pedaling could literally pull a truck. And for some reason, it seems like wheelchairs are built so that people just literally just push the wheel like forward. I don't understand why it's like that, because the design is pretty much the same thing as Flintstones cars. If it's like that, I mean, if you're just pushing the wheel, I mean, it's Flintstones cars also have wheels, and then they just use their feet. They didn't use any leverage or anything. I don't understand why wheelchairs don't have gears. Like they don't like have any sort of. You could easily have like a crankshaft and gears on a wheelchair, but ultimately it'd be really cool to have wheelchairs also all become like e-trikes. But unfortunately, there are laws that govern trikes when they're I don't know exactly. I don't have to ask questions about this, but e-bikes are not considered motorized because it doesn't have a combustion engine, and I guess that's not anything that isn't a combustion engine isn't a motor. I guess it works for me. That's cool. So e-bikes you don't need a license for an e-bike. For anything that does have a motor and is under 40, it's if 49cc or under, you don't need a license. But you also can't take it on the highway, so you have that catch-22. But you can still always take the inner paths. Anything above 50cc, then you do need a license. But you can actually go through the CHP and get a license, and just an M1 license, and skip a driver's license altogether. You just take a class that's very similar to taking like an what's it called? FAA license exam. So you just take a test essentially. You get a certificate, and then you get an M1 license, and it's it costs like $300, and I think it's just like a little side hustle to do. It seems to be only a California thing, and I have my suspicions for why that is. But yeah. So if anybody has any trouble and is hassled by like the authorities about just marking potholes, which is you're not, this isn't graffiti here, this isn't tagging, this is literally making things safer and better because the thing is already bad, and labeling something as being a hazard isn't actually a crime. Your intention is good. Your intention is to make things safer for people. You did not create the pothole. The pothole is a hazard that is existential, like it exists, and you marking it is existentially making it safer so that people could see it. So originally when I used orange, I thought that would be more fluorescent on asphalt, but it didn't really work that well. It is still very fluorescent on sidewalks, and I started making stickers, but white actually does work surprisingly well on sidewalks too, and it's just much cheaper. So I think I'm just gonna keep using white and not use orange just for fun because I still have it and I like that color. You can see a lot of orange, like starting off at Fruitvale, and then people apparently realized that white is better, and then they actually started just covering the same spots that were covered in orange with white, and then just kept going. And some people might, I don't know if anybody would ever not understand why the purpose of this, because if you're a driver or a biker or use the roads, then you would know why. And using white on asphalt makes plenty of sense. You can use any color you want, but white works fine. It's cheap. It's very cheap. Just use like this quick color stuff. But if you want a signature color for fun, then do whatever you want. I like this color. But yeah, like if you have any experience driving, you know that you don't like rough roads, and you know that like rough roads are caused by potholes, and the more that you leave potholes, the more the potholes spiderweb just like the way a like a crack on a windshield, over time that crack will eventually spread. So a pothole on a road, if left alone, will be continuously striked, because even most people want to avoid potholes if they can. No one wants to hit the pothole because it does damage your tire. It can actually pop your tire, and it will make the pothole crumble a little bit more every single time. It will make the pothole bigger, and there's a point when the pothole actually starts cracking and spiderwebbing, and then it actually can't be filled anymore, because it's no longer actually just a pocket. It's a sprawling, it's begun to chew up the asphalt itself, and the asphalt itself is no longer integrated. It's disintegrated the entire like web between all the potholes. So at that point, there's no real point in even trying to fill those potholes anymore. You have to repave the entire thing, and then repaving, that just exposes everyone to just chemicals that are just terrible, because what you pave cars with is pretty much the corpses of old cars, and they still use lead to stop cars, lead brakes for some reason, even though there's plenty of other solutions like regenerative braking, just using things like magnetic forces, like the way that copper versus a magnet will just automatically break, the way that Disneyland has all this technology that automatically brakes, where it's almost like impossible for anything to go wrong, because everything just automatically brakes through friction. But car tires still use lead, and the tires that are being grounded up to make asphalt contain lead in them, and they contain a lot of other rare earth toxic metals, and that is something that when they are they're retarring the road, the fumes are wafting through the air, and that's actually not good either, because then now everyone's breathing that in. And yeah, I guess that would be the ultimate solution, is if they get that done. But personally, if we could push for that to be done also in a way where it continues with current trends, and the roads become more walkable and bikeable and just more cozy, it'd be better. Because of downtown, where cars are driving by at 45 miles per hour, is not comfortable. No one wants to hang out there. It's the pollution from cars doesn't really come from the tailpipe. It's like one of the biggest myths, and they use it all the time. And that's why it makes it seem like cows burping is more polluting than cars. The pollution from cars comes from manufacturing them. It comes from obviously refining the gasoline, and it comes from it does come from the tailpipe as well. But a lot of it actually comes from the fact that it's just the asphalt. We have to make this weird asphalt crap, and we cover everything with this black crap asphalt, and keep having to fill it back up. And the tires are made out of the same materials that is supposed to grip the asphalt, and it's compliance. It's designed for the asphalt, and the asphalt is designed for the tires. They're both mated to each other. They're both made of the same thing, essentially. So we have to have asphalt because cars, and I guess bikes also, use tires. So I guess I can't complain there. But you could see how quickly the road actually is the source of the real pollution. If you just clean the chain of your bike till it's like chrome shiny, and then just like ride just down the street. Just don't even go through the dirt. Just ride down the street. And by the time you get home, you notice that your chain is black. That's how quickly that the asphalt, like the soot from the road, has kicked its way up and gotten your chain black. And that is constantly flowing up through the air, especially during like the summer, especially during like hotter days, and especially because cars are getting heavier, so there's more friction. And there's lots of times like when it's hot enough during the daytime that you can actually like look, like just kind of duck down and look at a street, and you can actually see the fumes coming up from the asphalt, and you're actually literally breathing that in, and it's really bad for you. You don't want to breathe that in because that's like lead and all sorts of chemicals that you really don't want to get into your brain or your body at all. And that's why there's, among other reasons, is why there's a high correlation between living near like highways and having childhood, having your kids have asthma, Alzheimer's, or not, sorry, autism, or like old people having autism, like, or younger and younger if you're having early onset Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And it's, yeah, it's, I sometimes I mix autism and Alzheimer's because it sounds similar. But, yeah, like early onset Alzheimer's, like it's a common issue we have nowadays, and they used to think that it was from smog, from being in a car, but it's not, because they found that it actually applies to people who live near the highways as well. And the term that is used to describe that is environmental racism because of redlining, because they would tend to pack like like lower end people, as they would call them, I guess, low class people, near the highways, so that they'd have to like be the filters. That's why we have terms like oh, he's from the other side of the tracks. That's like beginning of redlining. The story of Roger Rabbit is why we have like that was like the story of how LA was completely destroyed by highways, and deliberately, and it got people to just get stuck in traffic by making these spaghetti roads. And there's something called Bryce paradox, Braess paradox, and it's not really a paradox if you really think about it, like inverted. When you're driving, you're actually not really driving. Your destination, because laws exist. You're not just like driving in the grass here like the way you do a bike. Your path is predetermined between home and work. You will always go through the same signals, the same intersections. You will stop at the same stoplights. You will stop at the same stop signs. It's all predetermined. So no matter what happens, even if there was no speed limit, you will always go through the same process, unless you were just break the laws, like completely break the laws, right? You will always go the same process, even if no other car existed. The easiest way to think about it is if you had one train, right? A train could have like pretty much infinite, like it could be a circuit, like it could have like infinite capacity where it would just load from one end and then the other end, and you could just keep speeding it up as fast as it could go, and it would be a circuit. There's unload stuff. Add one switch, that's adding one track, right? You add one track, that would seem to add capacity. But the moment you added that one track, you added a switch, which means that you added traffic. Because suddenly now, the two, even though you added more track, you actually added more capacity. The two have to actually deal with a single switch. So even if there was only one train, it would actually have to switch. So the more tracks you add to anything, the more switches you add. And the same thing applies to cars. The more roads you add, the more intersections you add, those are equivalent to switches. And every single intersection you pass by, you have to pretty much slow down at, because there's people, who want to cross. There's all sorts of stuff going on, right? And they did this experiment where it was somewhere down south where they took a standard like suburban road and just moved it downtown, just for like a 4-day experiment, and asked people how they felt about it. And they're just like, oh my god, this is insane. There's no line going down the middle, or everyone's gonna like crash, everyone's gonna go head to head collision. And they didn't realize that you literally drive that way every single day if you live in the suburbs. There's no line going down your suburban road. People know how to ride, like, naturally, just, and share a common road without a line going down the middle. And that's all they did. It was just demonstrate that the context is all that matters. It's like the perception is what matters. So, like, people think that adding more tracks, or sorry, adding more I believe in trains, so I'd say add more tracks, because tracks are great, because they're being honest. Tracks truly do drive the train. It's like the most obvious way to have autonomous vehicles. We already have them. They're called trains. But as far as individual trains, cars, you're on a predetermined track, and you have to follow, and you have to change lanes. Every time you change lanes, you cause about 1,000 feet worth of phantom traffic behind you just by changing lanes, and that causes traffic. So every time you add so adding lanes, widening them, encourages people to actually change lanes, which actually causes this weird spring effect, where everyone, by changing lanes, it just pulsates and cascades like a spring, and causes everyone to slow down behind them, and it just creates like this traffic jam for no reason. And you've probably seen them before, where it's like you're driving and then you're suddenly in traffic, and then it clears up. There's nothing there, and all that really happened was someone changed lanes and someone overreacted and braked, and that caused the next person to brake, and it caused the next person to brake, and it goes 1,000 feet back, and then all of a sudden everyone's slowing down. And then once the phantom traffic happens, other people start trying to get around it, and other people start trying to change lanes too, because it feels like another lane is going faster, and that causes someone else changing lanes, which causes more phantom traffic jams to occur, because every time you change lanes, the person that you're getting ahead of has to brake, which then causes that car behind them to brake, and it just keeps going back. So like everyone, like, because, and then you have things like zipper intersections, like where it's like a merging intersection, where people feel like it's cheating when two lanes are supposed to merge to one, and then the drivers on the right side get to the front and want to enter, and people won't let them in because they think it's cheating. And so for some reason everyone wants everyone to just get into the left lane early, which leaves the right lane like empty for like a huge span of roads. So it's like you could fit like 30 cars in this huge span of roads, just because people don't want to feel offended like they're cheating and cutting ahead in line. But those merging lines are actually they're called zipper lanes. Each car is supposed to reach the end so that each road has full capacity, and they're just supposed to interchange, just zipper together. And the cars will actually drive perfectly fine, consistently, like completely regulated, and they're would not be anyone that over or underreacts, and all the cars would actually end up driving faster that way. People actually blockading each other, and people like, trying to get around traffic, and if they're in traffic and changing lanes and thinking that they're going to get faster and get around the traffic somehow while being in traffic, can't be traffic and be in traffic and get around traffic by changing lanes. But people do that, and that causes more traffic. And that's what, and then besides that, people also exit and get on the freeway, which then also causes traffic, because once someone gets on the highway, it causes people to have to brake, and every time someone brakes, everyone behind them brakes, and then you have toll booths, so that obviously causes traffic. That's why we have so much traffic, heading to San Francisco. And so no matter what, like, traffic becomes inevitable, and adding more lanes never ever solves more traffic. It never ever solves traffic, because it's kind of like the same thing as like logistics. You can apply it to like Barry's paradox. Also applies to like Steve Jobs' methodology. Like when he ran, he insisted on the iPhone, for instance, being just the iPhone. They would only sell one iPhone, and that's it. Let's put all our efforts into this one iPhone and just sell the iPhone. And people stand in line, just all buy this one white iPhone, or all buy the one white iPod, right? But imagine if they made a white and a black one. Suddenly, efficiency would go down. But here's the odd part. Even though you just added an option that seems like it would actually make people happier, right? Like, you would think that, oh, hey, some people want a black iPhone. That would make a certain population happier. Some people want a black, so now you gave people more options, right? So people are happier. But there's actually something called in marketing, and it's very thoroughly researched, and it's known as opportunity cost. When you're given two options, you will always feel less happy, because by choosing one, you're foregoing the other. And it's not like they're like, actually Samsung did something like a bespoke edition, which is pretty cool, because like they left their phones at the stage where they could paint them last, so you could actually color your phone the way you want. I don't know why a lot more companies don't do that, but anyway, when you do actually have like more models, you actually end up creating more unhappiness. Like, the larger the menu, the more time the person will spend trying to decide, and the less happy the person will be, because they will have a larger feeling that they chose, like the odds are they chose the wrong thing. It's a really weird phenomenon, but yeah, if you give people just just 2 cups of water, and you said one was sweeter and one was not, and they would believe you, and they would just drink, and you go, yeah, this one's better. And then you basically force them to pick one or the other, and saying that one's healthier or something like that. No matter what, like, if you pick one, you will be giving up the other. So giving people like the two options will always create the equivalent to Brady's paradox, a switch, which causes traffic. But logistically, if you apply the same thing to like marketing in general, just psychology, it adds another layer. Even it actually makes people less happy. Like, when you give people like unnecessary options, it actually adds more confusion and dissatisfaction, because people kind of just want it all, and most people don't really know. Like, no one has perfect knowledge, right? So let's say you added like a new lane that's supposed to be a shortcut. Usually that it's pretty much like a rule that when you add a shortcut lane, it will actually end up adding on average more time for everyone. That's pretty much like the beginning of Brea's paradox, was that was like the discovery that every time they added a shortcut, that for some reason everyone's time actually it took everyone more time to get to their destination, and that's the reason why. It was because it just forced people to make decisions, and by forcing people to make decisions, it ended up slowing everyone down. And at the same time, you apply it to other things by forcing people to make decisions when things don't even really matter. Like, who cares if you have a black iPhone or a white iPhone, really, right? I mean, once you own the thing, like, put it in a case on it, then decorate every, put rhinestones on it, right? Doesn't matter if it's black or white. And I mean, most people treat phones almost like you're buying just like the internals, and you put the case on afterward, like it's like that's the chassis. So adding another option, like, the iPhone XL, the iPhone C, or something like that, is something that Steve Jobs would have never done. Um, it just makes things more chaotic. It jams up logistics. It makes tooling more difficult, and it actually just causes more confusion. And that same exact principle applies to traffic. So if we could somehow get our roads to, if we get ourselves to think invertedly, if it may seem weird to remove things like sidewalk parking, or remove even roads from having cars from car access, right? So your car cannot drive down this road anymore. It's now for people walking. That may seem like it's actually removing like freedom from the cars, but it's actually not. If we reverse time, and if I were to ask you, hey man, if we were to make it so that everyone has to drive on the right side of the road, would I be taking away your freedom? Or would you rather, everyone just choose to drive on the right or the left every day per person? Obviously, everyone would be worse off if they had to choose individually to drive on the right side or the left side. And everyone would get to where they want to go slower, and they would get in more accidents, and it'd be horrible. And they wouldn't even know why, really. It would just be hectic and it'd be horrible. But yet, restricting people to driving on the right side, taking away the option, saying you have to no longer use the left road, you have to use the right road. You now only have one road. You don't have two roads, you have one road. And then telling the other people on the other side that you only have one road. Suddenly, everyone goes faster because everyone agrees. Everyone's actually driving down one side. They don't have to keep making weird choices. And ultimately, when people drive, the reason why they're driving is to get to their destination. They're not driving to, like, get in weird hallway, like standoffs with people. They're driving so that they could continue going and get to their destination. Unless you're just cruising for fun, right? Even in that case, you'd rather people drive, following the general guidelines so that you could, pay attention to other things and just drive on the right side, not expecting that suddenly someone's also going to be driving the other way on the right road. So think about it that way. Like, if you were to go back in time, would you actually decide to remove the restriction